100 square kilometers. However, the error in Nome location can be reduced from 30 kilometers to less than 5 kilometers if we use a newly constructed United States travel time map, which incorporates findings from the current explosion series. Another interesting experiment was the recording of 5 Nougat explosions at water depths of about 4,000 feet off Santa Catalina Island, some 300 miles from the Nevada test site. Preliminary contractor evaluations comparing the ocean bottom records and university station records indicate that the ocean bottom data compare favorably with those obtained at the better land stations with respect to definition of first arrival time and phase distinction. The Nougat test series has also been used in the early field evaluation of new types of seismic detectors. Thus, on the Hard Hat shot, the first useful record obtained with a downhole seismic detector at large depths were obtained from the 7,500-foot level in an abandoned oil well near Hobart, Oklahoma. Similar encouraging results have been obtained from the 10,000-foot level of a hole near Dallas, Texas. The record from this hole for the Haymaker shot shows an improvement in signal-to-noise ratio of about 5.5 times between the surface and downhole detectors at a distance of 1,100 miles from the Nevada test site. As a consequence of the large number of underground nuclear explosions in the Nougat series and the devoted efforts of hundreds of technicians and scientists, an important body of knowledge has now been accumulated. This information is now undergoing extensive evaluation to determine its implications in the design of a practical underground nuclear test ban control system. In the meantime, it is anticipated that such projected nuclear explosions as Shoal, Coach, the Storax series, and the Dribble series will provide further unique data of the same general type to forward the objectives of the Vela Uniform program.
Sedan, a 100-kiloton nuclear cratering detonation, recently executed as part of the Atomic Energy Commission's Plowshare program. Plowshare envisages many uses for nuclear explosives, including applications in nuclear excavation, mining, production of useful isotopes, and power. Nuclear excavation is, however, the most straightforward application and the nearest to practical usage. The chairman of the Atomic Energy Commission has recently established within the Plowshare program a research goal to determine the feasibility of nuclear excavation within approximately the next 5 years. Project Sedan was the first step in implementation of this program. The basic objective of Sedan was to determine the cratering effects of a deeply buried, high-yield nuclear explosion. Previous experience with 1 kiloton and smaller explosives has shown that as a nuclear explosion is buried deeper and deeper, crater size steadily increases until a depth of burst is reached, for which crater dimensions are maximum. Below this depth, crater size decreases. Also, as the explosion is buried deeper and deeper, the fraction of the radioactivity released to the atmosphere becomes less and less. Thus, it is possible to choose a depth of burst that will give almost maximum crater size with the release of only a few % of the radioactivity. Using these concepts, the depth of burst chosen for Sedan was 635 feet. The predicted crater diameter ranged from 1,200 to 1,500 feet, and the depth from 180 to 315 feet.
I'll be over soon.
The release of radioactivity is expected to be less than 4%. The explosive used for Sedan was a 100 kiloton thermonuclear device in which less than 30% of the total energy came from fission. Since only a few percent of this fission fraction escaped to the atmosphere, less than 2 kilotons of radioactivity was released by Sedan. Sedan was the Atomic Energy Commission's Nevada test site, located in southern Nevada, 70 miles northwest of Las Vegas. The specific location chosen for Sedan was at the north end of Yucca Valley, near the site of 2 earlier nuclear cratering detonations and much high explosive cratering work. Sedan was detonated at 10 a.m., July 6, 1962. This is a view taken from the top of a 1,500-foot tower, located 6 miles from ground zero. These sequences are being shown at about 1/3 normal speed. The base surge, seen forming here, continued to grow until it covered an area about 5 miles in diameter. The main cloud rose to a height of 12,000 feet above the desert floor. This close-up view was taken from a ground station 3 miles from ground zero. The dome rose to a height of 290 feet before it vented at 3 seconds. This long view gives a better picture of the mass of material moved by the explosion and the early stages of cloud formation. A very large fraction of the radioactivity that escaped from Sedan was mixed with the fallback in the crater area. Thus, the cloud carried only a small fraction of the radioactivity. The area covered by the base surge is clearly discernible in this aerial view by the pattern of light-colored dust. The crater is about 1,200 feet in diameter and 320 feet deep. The lip ranges in height from 20 to 100 feet. The predictions and the results compare favorably. The fallout pattern from Sedan extended almost due north from the crater area. Shown here are the 5/10 Rankton and 3.9 Rankton isodose lines. These correspond to the total dose a person would receive assuming continuous residence. The highest dose received by any off-site resident was 2/10 Rankton. These isodose lines represent the dose one would receive assuming entry into the area 1 week after the shot and continuous residence thereafter. Research is being done on nuclear explosives with so little radioactivity that excavation projects will be possible with no off-site radiation problem. Large-scale excavation projects, such as harbors and canals, require the use of explosives in the range from 100 kiloton to over a megaton. Sedan has been a major step forward in the nuclear excavation program by extending our cratering experience into this high-yield range.
Yes. Got it.
This film shows the preparation, transport, delivery, and emplacement of the SATM in typical parachute missions by swimmers. Once released, the SATM falls to the end of a 17-foot lowering line attached to the jumper's parachute harness. Separating the munition from the jumper decreases the impact shock on the jumper at water entry. Keeping the munition attached to the parachute prevents free fall of the munition and prevents the jumper from losing the munition in night missions or heavy seas. The strap end of the lowering line is passed through the apex of the harness and a metal ring on the underwater pressure case. Once secured, the line is coiled in a figure 8 or S coil and placed in a breakaway bag. The bag is closed with nylon thread or a heavy rubber band. Next, a cloth cover is placed over the flat end of the munition. This end of the munition has several projections, including the arming mechanism, which might injure the parachutist or snag parachute shroud lines if not covered. The strap end of the lowering line is temporarily tied to the cloth cover to keep the lowering line from being pulled out of the breakaway bag during handling. The SATM flotation bag is similar in appearance to an air mattress. While airborne and during the first part of the jump, the flotation bag cushions the parachutist and protects him from injury. To keep the munition from swinging away from the jumper, a strap from the flotation bag is attached to either the right or left leg of the jumper with a quick-release fold. The parachutist releases this strap in the air just before he drops the munition to the end of the lowering line. The cloth cover on the aft end of the munition is also tied to the flotation bag to keep the cover from being lost in midair. Inflation is simple, and the flotation bag has ample buoyancy to keep the SATM afloat while the jumper gets out of his parachute and puts his scuba gear into operation. Preparing the swimmer for a SATM jump mission is as simple as preparing the munition. First, the swimmer puts on all or part of a wetsuit. Next, he puts on a standard Navy life jacket. The tethering strap from the SATM lowering line is fastened to this waistband. The tethering strap keeps the munition joined to the swimmer after he removes the parachute harness and his lowering line strap. The swimmer's weight belt goes on over the waistband. Scuba gear goes on next. A variety of scuba equipment is compatible with this type of delivery. Standard or steerable T-10 military parachutes are used, but the harness back straps are usually lengthened to get the parachute on over the scuba tanks. Next, the SATM suspension fittings are attached to the D-rings on the parachute harness. The strap end of the lowering line is passed beneath the right main lift web of the parachute harness and then secured in the buckle. Fastening the lowering line here takes much of the shock off the jumper when the SATM is dropped to the end of the lowering line. The T-7A reserve parachute is attached to D-rings on the SATM suspension cables. Mounting the reserve chute vertically from the munition allows the parachutist to release one side of the reserve parachute in the air, permitting free access to the quick release box on the parachute harness. The scuba mouthpiece is attached to the parachute harness in a position easily reached by the jumper once he is in the water. Engineering development tests on the SATM parachutist swimmer delivery system were conducted jointly by the United States Navy and Sandia Laboratory. UDT and SEAL team members jumped from several Navy aircraft to evaluate their suitability as carriers for SATM jumpers. Each aircraft presented different problems for the parachutist in terms of body position and the sequence he had to follow to make a safe exit. Tests were made from the CH-46A Sea Knight helicopter, with 2 parachutists participating in each jump. One carried the SATM, the second was the safety man. The Navy's P-5 aircraft presents a rather unusual problem. Not only is the exit door very small, but the bottom of the door is considerably above the aircraft deck. The problem was solved by building a wooden platform from which the jumpers could make an easy exit. Jump tests were also made from a Marine C-130 cargo aircraft.
I was having fun.
And from the SH-3A Navy helicopter. After exit from the aircraft, all jump missions into water follow the same sequence. Once the parachute stabilizes, the jumper releases one side of his reserve parachute. Then he releases the leg strap. He actuates the single-point quick-release mechanism, and the SATM falls to the end of the lowering line. The jumper positions the quick-release box on the parachute harness so that a single blow will open it. Once in the water, the 2 members of the jump team remove and sink their parachutes and parachute harness. Using the lowering line as the tow line, the demolition team then swims to the target. At the target, the tow line is used to secure the SATM to an anchoring point. The time delay between arming and detonation, preset during preparation of the munition, allows the swimmers time to make a safe escape. After turning the external arming mechanism, which starts timer rundown, the swimmers move out. They rendezvous with a sub, or swim out of the area and are picked up by high-speed surface craft. Behind them, they leave the armed SATM.
forming a special task force were the first in our Army's history to engage in a tactical exercise supported by live nuclear firepower. Every man was required to wear a security badge and a radiological dosimeter.
Nuclear protection on a button.
Early in July, the task force arrived at Nellis Air Force Base, the railhead nearest to the Atomic Energy Commission's Nevada test site, where the exercise would be carried out. The mission had been given a high priority and a short get-ready schedule. In 6 weeks from the time the selected commanders...
I am
and troops
detecting
were alerted,
predators
they
tracking
were
your position.
organized into a mechanized force, given intensive training, and moved from their home station, Fort Lewis, Washington. The troops were transported by commercial and military buses from Nellis Air Force Base to the test site, a distance of 100 miles. Trucks, guns, and tanks, as soon as they were unloaded, proceeded to the test site without delay. The task force was comprised of a mechanized rifle company, a mechanized battalion headquarters, a platoon of tanks, a battery of 105mm howitzers, and a headquarters company, which included a battalion mortar and Davy Crockett platoon. Arriving at the AEC test site, the troops were billeted in a trailer camp, located approximately 25 miles from the selected exercise area. Here, the various troop units were given further orientation on the nature and scope of this special mission. Complete preparations had been made for their arrival and occupancy of quarters, thus obviating the necessity for transporting much impedimenta normally required for a field exercise. Substantial mess halls were provided, and fresh cooked food was served upon arrival and at all morning and evening meals. The men lost no time on crating equipment. The headquarters of the exercise director was located in a similar nearby camp. The headquarters consisted of a normal staff augmented to handle the special requirements of this mission. Preparations for the exercise began on schedule. Men and equipment moved out and reconnoitered the terrain over which they would operate. Several dry runs were carried out at critical points to familiarize the men with the time schedule of the overall
Everything
operation.
outside the wall ain't safe. That's just how it is.
Preventive maintenance activities were begun immediately
at least it's honest
to
work.
ensure the effectiveness
Stick
of
to
all
the
equipment
roads. You
required
got
for
a
the
better
exercise.
chance of surviving.
Timing and coordinating a field exercise of this type called for exact pre-planning of the functions and movements of each individual unit involved. This field exercise was not a wargaming maneuver, but rather a pre-designed demonstration of the tactical employment of low-yield nuclear weapons in conjunction with conventional weapons. Close support weapons were set up in advance in preparation for registering and firing upon pre-selected target areas in the first phase of the operation. The artillery battery was likewise set up in its supporting position, and registration rounds were fired onto the targets designated in each phase of the overall operation. Each element of the task force was briefed in its particular responsibilities, including the precise safety measures to be taken at each stage of the overall operation.
Hey, I think those Volbra brothers are looking for you.
The objective of this operation is to demonstrate technically the infantry Navy and Armor's current organic low-yield nuclear delivery system, the Davy Crockett. The tactical situation has been pre-designed to illustrate the employment of Davy Crockett in support of an attack.
Don't touch the
The
paint.
plan of the exercise calls for the Davy Crockett to be fired in the
Whatever.
direction of the 1st Mechanized Battalion.
You don't know what this is, do you?
Our
This
forces
is the
are
wall, the great green guardian.
Company A.
Thinking you need a little education. Maybe a bit of community service. What do you say?
Company B, simulator.
Happy to help out.
You see this paint I'm using?
Company
Only one
C,
place left in the whole Commonwealth you can get it. Hardware Town. Ruined store close by to the west. Bring back a can of paint and it'll be 100 caps in your pocket. How does that sound?
Only if you throw in some more money.
Fine. Pay you 125 caps.
I think you can do better than that.
Driving a hard bargain, huh? 150 caps.
Paint retrieval. I'm on it.
Much obliged.
and the
Working
battalion
hard?
Good luck getting that paint. Good luck getting that paint.
The enemy in this sector of the
Good luck
combat
getting that
zone has
paint.
been driven back to these positions.
And while the paper might point their fingers at
He also holds strong reserves here.
Abbott.
Good luck getting that paint.
The battalion has been ordered to secure objectives 1 and 2. Company A will attack to seize objective
Good
1.
luck getting that paint.
Company B will attack to seize objective 2. To assist in breaching the enemy's defenses, one Davy Crockett nuclear round will be detonated here. "26 minutes prior to the attack.
Hand-tooled pieces. Everything I got will keep you safe.
The significance of this operation...
I'll take a look, sure.
Don't forget to stock up on ammo.
Key representatives from all the services and other interested agencies were invited to observe this historic event, a critical first for the Army. The President was represented by close personal advisors. Prior to the exercise, the observers were oriented on the salient characteristics of the Davy Crockett system.
You again.
And on the overall
All right,
scheme of
got
maneuver
plenty of
they were
supplies.
I've got a few minutes to browse.
Here's what we got.
For the firing of the nuclear round was under control of the Defense Atomic Support Agency. Safety measures for the exercise were supervised by the Chief Safety Officer. At H-5 minutes, all troops were ordered to take cover in previously prepared trenches. At H-3 minutes, all observers put on high-density goggles or turned their backs to the direction of the burst to avoid retinal burn. At H-2 minutes, green star clusters were fired as the final warning before the detonation. The round was launched at H-17 seconds to accomplish H-hour impact on the desired ground zero at a range of 2,852 meters.
Luck wouldn't last forever.
Round was set for a low height of burst. It detonated perfectly, releasing its lethal radiation.
Something wrong?
Like
Another
any
stray
other
coming
nuclear
in from the
weapon,
rain.
The Davy Crockett gives off 3 basic
Afraid you're too
effects:
late. Office is closed.
blast and nuclear radiation.
I know you must be busy, but I won't take much of your time, miss. It's important.
You're right. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be rude, but it's just... the detective. He's gone missing.
Approximately 200 meters.
Don't worry, I can help. Tell me what happened.
Nick was working a case. Skinny Malone's gang had kidnapped a young woman, and he tracked them down to their hideout in Park Street Station. There's an old vault down there that they use as a base. I told Nick he was walking into a trap, but he just smiled and walked out the door like he always does.
Thermal effects to exposed skin would have
I'll
been
find him.
significant
You have my word.
Thank you. Nick should be easy to spot. He's always wearing that old hat and trench coat getup. Please, hurry.
Was militarily insignificant. Moderate damage to tanks from blast extended to about 20 meters.
There we
The
go.
average winds at the time of the detonation were south-southeast at 25 kilometers per hour. These caused a rather elongated fallout pattern. At 1 hour after the burst, the 1 rad per hour contour extended over 1,700 meters downwind. The 10 rad per hour contour extended 700 meters. With a smaller 10 rad per hour contour enclosing a hot spot further downwind. An aerial survey of radiological intensities was made shortly after the burst by a monitoring team. The data obtained by this team, combined with ground survey data, established the pattern of radiation intensities in the area of the operation.
Yeah, the railroad fights against the engine.
The battalion commander performed his tactical damage assessment by helicopter. His personal observations, combined with the radiological data collected, provided the information necessary to complete his estimate of the situation. In the event radiation intensities had prevented him from following his primary plan, he would have had to implement a contingency plan. His information, however, assured him that his primary plan could be followed. This plan called for 2 platoons of Company A to attack Objective 1 along this axis, while the 3rd platoon secured the battalion's right flank by seizing the shoulder of the penetration. In his damage assessment flight, the battalion commander had observed a previously unreported enemy force in an assembly area here. He estimated it to be a reinforced mechanized company. This force would menace his right flank during the movement to seize Objective 1. The battalion commander, therefore, decided to engage this target of opportunity with 2 nuclear rounds, as soon as he could displace his Davy Crockett launchers within range of the target. Meanwhile, he would contain this enemy force with artillery and mortar fire. Troops were ordered into their carriers in preparation for the attack, as soon as the battalion commander had determined that his primary plan could be implemented. At H+26, with the platoon of tanks supporting the effort of Company A, the battalion jumped off. Artillery and mortar fires supported the advance. The right platoon of Company A, supported by tanks, seized the right shoulder of the penetration, thereby assuring the remainder of the company free movement toward Objective 1. Artillery and mortar fire on the target of opportunity prevented this enemy element from interfering with the advance to Objective 1. When the right platoon secured the right shoulder, the tanks with this unit were in position to supplement the artillery and mortar fire on the target of opportunity. When the Company Minus reached its dismount point, all elements of the battalion were able to begin the final phase of the attack. Supporting fires lifted and shifted on call from the company commanders. Tanks moved forward in support of the infantry.
Nice.
By this time, the light Davy Crockett, which had been displacing in the rear of the advance, was in position to begin adjustment of fire on the target of opportunity. A heavy system was required to alter its route of displacement because of radiation intensities, and was therefore somewhat delayed going into position. Nevertheless, within 11 minutes of the time Objective 1 was taken, the heavy system was in position and firing its final adjusting round. 2 simulated nuclear fires were placed on the target of opportunity as planned. With this action, the exercise was considered to be successfully terminated. Immediately following the exercise, the battalion employed standard unit decontamination procedures to ensure that vehicles and men were freed of the main possible source of radiological contamination. Radiac equipment was used to detect contamination exceeding the safety criteria of the exercise. No one needed further decontamination, and only 2 vehicles required a wash. On this July day, 1962, the Army demonstrated its ability to plan and safely conduct a tactical exercise involving the use of low-yield nuclear weapons. It was further demonstrated that a battalion has the capability to employ the Davy Crockett tactically, and that the doctrine for such employment is sound. The Davy Crockett was not designed to win battles by itself. Only when it is integrated with other combat power available to the commander, as was demonstrated today, does this weapon fill the need for which it was designed, to give the infantry and armor unit commanders simple, yet effectively responsive, nuclear firepower.
It's good to relax after a busy day. An average day, but a busy day. These fellows wearing the warm coats spend a good part of each day just searching for food. And in this sea, at this point in time, it's becoming difficult to find enough food to go around. Things are looking up, as you will see. Chitka Island, the 4th large island from the far end of the craggy Aleutian chain, about 1,400 miles southwest of Anchorage, Alaska. Wildlife abounds throughout the island chain. But most unique of all inhabitants in the frigid waters around these cheerless, fog-bound islands, the sea otter, an aquatic mammal, ungainly and almost helpless ashore. In the sea, he has grace and style. Bristling silver whiskers make him seem serious and wise. Fact is, he is shy and suspicious. He has a troubled memory of man, who for centuries had been a fearsome enemy. Time was when sea otters, numerous as flocks of birds, swam and fished the coastal waters of America from the outer tip of the Aleutians on down into Mexico. But that was long ago. Perhaps the world's most luxurious fur, fine, dense, and very valuable. Almost 2 centuries of hunters had roamed the seas, decimating sea otter colonies. And by the turn of the 20th century, these pleasant, playful creatures were on the verge of extinction. Other fur-bearing animals along these wind-worn shores suffered much the same plight. Before great natural resources could be lost forever, conservation had begun. In 1911, the International Fur Seal Treaty was signed.
The sea otter and other animals were now protected by law. In 1913, the Aleutian chain was made a national wildlife refuge. The few remaining sea otter colonies began to grow again, but the process was painfully slow. Sea otters reproduce in their own time. A single pup is the rule. Twins or triplets are extremely rare. Gestation lasts a year, and for another year, the pup is helpless. It lives an easygoing life, mostly clinging to its mother's chest. She is indulgent and affectionate, but strict. Now and again, she may cuff the pup, teaching him to dive for food, stay underwater, anchor himself in the sea kelp to hide from his enemies, and snooze. A sea otter lives about 15 years. Each year, a colony can be expected to increase by only 1 pup per 10 sea otters of population. Even so, sea otter populations have grown. There are large colonies in the Aleutians, in Prince William Sound, some in Monterey Bay, California. Perhaps a total of 25 or 30,000 sea otters. But where sea otters once flourished in great numbers, no colonies exist today. At Amchitka, the colony grew until there were more mouths to feed than natural food resources could handle. At last count, perhaps 3,000 otters, including Harvey here. This chap has a voracious appetite. He will eat a quarter of his own weight in a day. Shellfish his favorite, but also quantities of fish and squid. Table manners? He's irrepressible. His chest is his table. He uses his front paws with dexterity and self-assurance. Still, he can't seem to avoid spilling his food. Contaminated fur will lose its water repellency. When this happens, the otter's skin is exposed and vulnerable. His body temperature drops, and the icy cold of the sea threatens his life. Since his life depends on cleanliness, he spends a great deal of time scrubbing his fur after meals. Fast-moving seawater helps wash away food scraps, but he prefers to handle the job